My wife smugly demanded a divorce, claiming I was too poor to afford a real lawyer and should just accept losing everything. But when we walked into court, her arrogant smile vanished as the state's most feared, insanely expensive divorce attorney sat beside me, because he wasn't hired. He was my older brother. My wife demanded a divorce in the house. "You can't afford a lawyer to fight me." I replied, "You're right." She served me papers in court only to see the city's most feared, expensive divorce attorney sit down next to me. He looked at her and said, "He doesn't have to afford me. I'm his older brother." My wife, Evelyn, informed me last Tuesday that she wanted a divorce. There was no sadness in her eyes, no regret in her voice. It was a declaration of victory. We were sitting in the living room of the house we had spent 8 years turning into a home, and she was speaking to me with the detached finality of a corporate executioner. "It's over, Tom," she said, placing a file folder on the coffee table. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. These are my terms." I didn't open the folder. I didn't have to. She was more than happy to list her demands. She wanted the house that my grandfather had helped me put a down payment on. She wanted 70% of our shared savings. She wanted spousal support for a minimum of 5 years. It wasn't a negotiation. It was an unconditional surrender. When she was finished, she leaned back, a smug, confident smirk on her face. "And I don't want to fight on this, Tom," she said, her voice dripping with condescending pity. "Let's be realistic. You're a high school woodshop teacher. You make a decent living, but you can't afford a real lawyer. My guy will bury you in legal fees before you even see the inside of a courtroom. It's better for you to just agree to the terms and walk away." I just sat there looking at this woman I had loved, this woman I had built a life with, and I felt a profound sense of coldness settle over me. She didn't just want to leave me, she wanted to ruin me. She saw me as weak, as an obstacle to be crushed and discarded. Her biggest weapon, she thought, was my inability to fight back. I let the silence hang in the air for a long moment. Then I looked at her, my face a mask of resignation, and I said the 2 words she was expecting to hear. "You're right." The relief on her face was immediate. She had won. The humble, simple teacher wasn't going to put up a fight. She stood up, smoothed her skirt, and said, "Good. I'm glad you're being sensible about this. You'll be served with the official papers next week." Then she walked out of the room. Here's what Evelyn knew. She knew I was a man of simple means. She knew I didn't have tens of thousands of dollars to throw at a legal battle. She also knew that I had a brother, an older brother named Marcus. What she also knew, and what she was banking on, was that Marcus and I hadn't spoken in 5 years. Marcus isn't a teacher. Marcus is a shark. He is, without exaggeration, the most feared and expensive divorce attorney in the state. He's a legal predator whose name makes other lawyers nervous. And he was, for all intents and purposes, no longer a part of my life. We had a falling out after our parents died. It was over the family home, the house we grew up in. I wanted to keep it to preserve it as a memory, a place for our families together. I'm sentimental like that. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, saw it as an illiquid asset. He wanted to sell it, divide the money, and move on. We had a bitter, terrible argument that ended with us on opposite sides of a canyon of stubborn pride. We hadn't spoken since. Evelyn had witnessed the tail end of that fallout. She saw me as completely and permanently isolated from the only powerful person in my family. In her strategic calculation, my greatest potential asset was a dead one. She was wrong. For 3 days after her announcement, I was in a dark place. She was right about one thing. I couldn't afford to fight her, not on her terms. The thought of losing my home, my savings, everything I had worked for was suffocating. On the 4th day, I hit rock bottom. And from there was nowhere to go but up. I swallowed every ounce of my pride, a pride that had cost me my brother for 5 years, and I found his private cell phone number. My hand was shaking as I dialed. I expected it to go to voicemail or to be answered by a sharp-voiced assistant. But after 2 rings, a familiar deep voice answered. "Hello, Marcus," I said, my own voice sounding weak and foreign to my ears. It's Tom. There was a long pause. For a moment, I thought he was going to hang up. Tommy, he finally said, the old nickname sounding strange after so many years. What's wrong? And it all came pouring out. I told him everything. I told him about Evelyn's demands, her lawyer, her coldness, and I told him her final arrogant taunt. You can't afford a lawyer to fight me. Another long, heavy silence stretched between us. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. The surprise was gone, replaced by something I hadn't heard in years. It was the sound of a protective older brother. It was the sound of steel. She said what? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I repeated her words. Okay, he said. When and where is the first court appearance? Next Tuesday at the downtown courthouse, I told him. I'll clear my schedule, he said. Don't talk to her. Don't talk to her lawyer. Don't sign anything. Just show up on Tuesday. I'll meet you there. We hung up. I sat there, my heart pounding with a mixture of terror and a terrifying hope. Evelyn thought she had disarmed me. She had no idea she had just handed me a nuclear weapon. She was about to learn a very hard lesson about what family really means. Update 1. The morning of the preliminary hearing was a miserable, rainy Tuesday. It felt appropriate. I walked into the courthouse alone, feeling every bit the part of the defeated man Evelyn expected me to be. I was wearing my best and only suit, the one I usually reserve for weddings and funerals. It felt like a bit of both. I entered the designated courtroom. It was a sterile, impersonal room that smelled of old paper and anxiety. Evelyn was already there, sitting at the plaintiff's table. She looked incredible. She was wearing a sharp, dark blue power suit, her hair perfectly styled. She looked confident, smug, and ready for a corporate takeover. Next to her sat her lawyer, a man in his 50s, with a self-satisfied smirk permanently affixed to his face. They were laughing quietly together as I walked in. She saw me and her smile faltered for a second, replaced by a look of pity. She probably expected me to look more broken. I just met her gaze, my expression blank, and walked over to the defendant's table. I sat down, placed my old briefcase on the table, and waited. Her lawyer stood up and sauntered over. Mr. Miller, he said, his voice oozing condescension. I'm glad to see you're here. I trust you've had time to review my client's very generous proposal. If you're prepared to sign today, we can make this quick and painless. I'm waiting for my counsel, I said quietly. He actually chuckled. Your counsel? Good luck with that. Let's not drag this out. He walked back to his table. The bailiff called the court to order. The judge, a stern-looking woman, entered and took her seat. She looked down at the docket. Miller versus Miller, she announced. Her lawyer, looking tired and utterly defeated, advised her to accept any terms we offered. And the terms my brother drafted were brutal. Evelyn didn't just walk away with nothing. She walked away with less than nothing. She was forced to relinquish any claim to the house. Her demand for spousal support was dismissed with prejudice. And because Marcus was able to prove that she had spent over $60,000 of marital assets on her affair, on hotels, gifts, and vacations with her lover, the judge ordered that amount to be deducted from her share of our savings and returned to me. She left the marriage with a small fraction of her original demand, a mountain of her own legal bills, and the public humiliation of having her entire sordid scheme laid bare in a court of law. The fallout in her personal life was just as devastating. Her lover, David King, faced with the legal and social consequences of his actions, dumped her almost immediately. He was a man who was attracted to a winner, and Evelyn had just suffered a spectacular public defeat. Her friends, many of whom had been forced to testify about her lies under oath, distanced themselves from her. She lost her fiancé, her house, her savings, her boyfriend, and her reputation, all in one fell swoop. All because she underestimated the quiet man she was married to. But the real story, the most important part of this whole chapter, is what happened with my brother. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, Marcus called me. Meet me at the old house, he said. I drove out to our parents' home, the house that had been the source of our stupid 5-year feud. I found him on the porch, just sitting on the steps. We didn't talk about the case. We didn't talk about Evelyn. We talked about our dad's terrible fishing trips, our mom's amazing apple pie. We talked about being kids. Finally, after a long silence, he looked at me. I was wrong, Tommy, he said. I was so focused on the money on the asset that I forgot what this place was. It's our home. I was wrong, too, I admitted. I was so stuck in the past. I wasn't willing to see that maybe there was a different future for this place. We didn't sell the house. We decided to keep it together. We've spent the last few weekends out there fixing it up. We're repairing the porch, painting the rooms, bringing it back to life. It's not a memorial to the past anymore. It's a project for our future, a place for our family, the real one, to gather. Working side by side with my brother, tools in hand, has healed a wound I thought would be a scar forever. Evelyn's parting shot to me was that I couldn't afford a lawyer. Her greed, her arrogance, her belief that I was weak and alone, that was the very thing that forced me to make the call that brought my brother back into my life. She thought she was isolating me. Instead, she reunited me with the most important family I have. She tried to leave me with nothing. But as I stand here today with my home secure and my brother by my side, I realize I have everything.